Welcome back to the Zero Lab podcast. I'm your host, Tom Hellkamp, along with my co-host, Max Johnson.
Hello.
And Austin Swain. How's it going, guys?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Doing great.
Today we're going to be talking about the debacle that was NAIC registration. We're going to be talking about a few more EXs revealed from the Pokemon 151 set. And then we're going to be going over what is the best deck and format right now, and what should you be bringing to regionals like Hartford or Milwaukee coming up in a few weeks. So then we have our Stellar Wish segment this week as well. So just kicking things off with NAIC. Who registered?
I did register, but I also had a leg up on the competition this time around.
Yeah?
Yeah, just because I was 16 out of 16 for the top 16, so
Oh,
I had the reserve spot.
Oh, I didn't realize you got priority reg. Okay.
Yep, got the priority registration.
Nice.
So I dodged all that, thankfully.
That's right, because you got your stipend.
Got the stipend for that.
Nice.
But I know that everyone else, like in the Minnesota Pokemon Discord, like people were having some trouble. Like I know a handful of people who go to a lot of regionals didn't get in, which is pretty sad. And anyone who did get in was fighting for their life for sure.
Yeah. So I registered on the first wave, but I feel like people didn't really understand like the error message they were getting. I think people thought some people maybe not. But some people thought in like that first minute when they were getting the error message that meant it was sold out. If you read it, it just said keep refreshing, like it's just getting a lot of traffic right now. And so I kept refreshing, and I think the tickets released or the registration opened at like 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And by 8, like I was refreshing until like 8:18, and that's when I got in. So 18 minutes later, I was able to get into wave 1. So people might not have understood that about some of the waves. And then unfortunately, I'm sure I was lucky enough that I could have tried to register on every single wave. But I'm sure there were certain people who could only register at one specific time. And for people in Europe, like that might have been 3 a.m. I don't know what time it was when a few of these registrations kicked off, right, in different regions. So, but also to be fair, the registration was for North American people, right? Like that, it's the North American Championships. It's gonna the registration times are going to prioritize North American players, just like it probably would for Australia and UIC and all that.
Sure.
Yeah. So I got in pretty easily. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't get in. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I do think more spots will open up, though. I think we saw more spots open up with EUIC.
Yeah.
And just generally, I think that they probably will be able to find a little bit more space. I'm sure they're conservative with the number of spots that they release at first to see what the demand is, to see how quickly it fills up, and they probably have a little bit more room to spare. There will be cancellations, and I'm sure they'll backfill any of those cancellations. But the biggest issue that I've seen on Twitter around this, or one of the biggest issues, is that collectors are registering for NAIC just to get the player kit and have no intention of playing. And so if you don't know, the kit for playing at the ICs this year is like a really sick collection of Eevee and Evolution merch.
And people going nuts for that.
And people are going crazy for the Evolutions. And so the playmats are really sick. The deck box is awesome. Like all of it's really cool. But there has been some talk on Twitter about collectors just registering no intention to play. They just wanted to get the player kit, which is really crappy. And I don't really know if there's any way to keep that from happening. Right. Unless you said, like, I don't know, at least force them to play to get it, right? Maybe be like, to get your player's kit for the IC, you got to play 3 rounds.
And I saw that. That's how it used to be when they gave out the shirts. Mm-hmm. They would give them out after round 3.
Yeah.
So something like that could be at least somewhat of a solution, right?
But it's tough too because I'm playing and I know I'm playing, and if I'm gonna go there the night before and like check in like we do for a lot of events, I just want to pick up my swag and then I don't want to worry about it on the day of the tournament.
No, that's for sure.
So I don't even know if it's a big enough problem to try to have a solution to it. It's just crappy, and hopefully more spots open up for players to get in.
Right, because if it's a situation where there's, let's say out of the 2,500 people who are registered, right, let's say 50 of them are collectors, that's a pretty small problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
0.1% of people who registered, are not intending to be able to play. Does it still suck? Yeah, of course. But thankfully, right, a 0.1% problem usually is not a big enough issue to warrant a large-scale change in an organization, usually.
Yeah. I do think that there was the frustration, obviously, is nobody wants to miss NAIC. It's going to be a cool format. Everyone's excited about the format. It's the last chance at Worlds. So the frustration is there for people who weren't able to register. I know I would be pissed if I hadn't been able to register.
Right.
And I think part of that is we saw the cap, and it was like 2,300 players. And I think most people, myself included, assumed that we could get pushing towards 3,000.
Yeah.
But we also have to understand that there's VGC. So that 2,300 number is just TCG. There's VGC. There's Go. There's Unite. Is there another one?
No, I think that's it.
That's it. But that's 4 events happening in the same convention center. Now, there's a lot of space at the convention center. It sucks, but I think we all thought there would be more spaces available. I think there will be more spaces that become available. So I hope that the people who didn't get in are able to. But one thing that I thought was really crappy as well about the discourse on Twitter was there was a little bit of discourse about like, oh, well, someone with 0 CP shouldn't be able to register before me. I have 200 CP, so I'm like NAIC is my chance to register or like qualify for Worlds. And so someone with 0 CP who's not even trying for Worlds, why would they get to register before me to get to NAIC? It's like, no. And like, screw off. Like, that is such BS.
And the thing is like, even if you have 0 CP, if you go to NAIC, you still have a shot at Worlds. All you need to do is get top 16.
Yes.
And well, all you need to do, but that's a top 16 would get you your invite.
Would
right?
it?
I think so. I think it's
No, I think it's probably top 8.
Oh, maybe it's top 8.
First place gets 500, second place gets 400.
You're right.
So it's like probably top 4 gets you there. I don't remember what the exact point totals are. But yes, someone could literally start with 0 CP. Yeah. It could have gone to no regionals, get a few cup finishes, get like a top 8 finish and have the Worlds invite, right?
Yeah.
And so no, we don't need to be gatekeeping. Like, frankly, I know some people disagree with this, but Pokemon is pay to win enough already. Like, if you have the money to go to every single regional and every single IC and every single SPE, like, you're going to get your Worlds invite unless you just, like, you would have to be so bad not to get your Worlds invite, being able to go to every regional, right?
Yeah.
Like, you should be getting better by going to all of these tournaments, right? And you should be able to get, like, what's the is it 6 for your BFL on regionals?
I think it's 8, isn't it?
If it's 8, you literally just need to get like top 128s and top 64s, and you can have your Worlds invite. Like, so there is an aspect of like, if you just have the money to go enough regionals, you're going to get your Worlds invite. And so all this stuff about like newer players shouldn't have priority or like should have less priority registering for things. Like, no. Just register. Like, and frankly, like, it sucks for the people who didn't get in, but if you were really worried, like, we all knew it was going to go fast, and we all knew that it was going to cap, and we all knew that the site was going to crash and that there were going to be these issues. Like, if you didn't expect that going into NAIC registration, you were crazy. And so frankly, I have to think that some of the people who didn't get in might not have tried that hard. Like I know that sucks. I know that sucks. But, like, there were 3 waves, and you could have found, like, if you were working, I get it. Some people were working, they couldn't do it, right? You could have found someone to try for you, right? Like, there were ways to try at every wave and to continue trying. Like, did you refresh for 20 minutes? Because I did. Like, or did you give up after 5 and be like, well, this isn't working? Like, and that's not to blame people, but, like, it just is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, and we're not, like, the gatekeeping stuff, just no. That's crazy.
I think something to keep in mind, too, is if you look at how many people were at NAIC last year, it was like 1,400, I think. It was not that many. Like,
yeah.
So that's like 1,000 more people than there was last year, and I think, like, yes, they need to keep trying to increase the cap and get as many people in, but like it doesn't just
To say they didn't increase it is crazy.
It's crazy. They almost doubled the size.
Yeah,
so like,
right.
I mean, I think it's kind of something I bet next year they'll be able to count even more people,
Yep.
and it's just gonna keep. They're gonna do their best to meet the demand, but like, it's not just a problem that you can just throw more judges at it and that solves everything. Like, there's a lot that goes into like having that many more people. Yeah. Like,
well, like, okay, so
Right.
if you were the person who booked NAIC last year, I don't exactly know how the booking goes for ICs versus regionals, right? There's probably, I think Pokemon probably books the IC stuff, but you booked the hall last year and you got 1,400 people for TCG, right? And so going into the next year, they have to book the place far in advance. They have to, and they probably can't book more on short notice, right? It's just unlikely
Right.
that they would be able to book more space like now, right?
It's not
Things are
uncommon for
probably-
event centers to have multiple events happening, and so even for the event centers that have just the exorbitant, is that the right word?
Exorbitant amount of space.
Space. A lot of those rooms are still going to be taken, not by the Pokemon company, but by
Other events.
the dentist convention or
There was the Heart convention in Portland this year, We
Right.
couldn't have taken their space. They needed to do their Heart convention.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd be like if you don't know, when you start looking into just how many
Yeah.
conventions are happening every single weekend, even just in an area relatively near you, if you live close to a big city, you would be very surprised.
But to finish my point, like Pokemon saw the numbers last year and they basically doubled them for this year. And so to say that they weren't reacting to the demand is untrue. To be fair to them, now Pokemon, I have my own problems with how they run things, right? But I mean, they booked a lot more space. I think they booked at least an entire other hall, if not two, this year than last year.
Which is amazing. It's a huge thank you, first of all, for being able to make so many more players be able to play. Because I know
if it had, imagine if it had been a 1,400 cap this year.
Right. I think that would have been outrageous.
Yeah. So they did expand the size of the event, and I'm sure they'll expand it next year, and I'm sure that more spots will open up. So, but it is tough. Like, I get it. I would be really ticked off if I didn't get in because I booked my travel ahead, because that's the other thing. I think they need to get the registration up earlier, because if the registration was a month and a half ago, I saw people online from like Europe who booked their travel, because you have to. You can't book your travel now like 4 weeks in advance, right?
It'd be way more expensive.
Way more expensive, way more difficult. They need to get these registrations out earlier so people can book their travel after getting registered, and that probably is going to need to be at least 2 months, if that's. And like, I think that's like a reasonable balance. Like, if you want to book your travel like 3 months in advance, you're taking that risk. But if registration is 2 months before the event instead of a month before the event, it's just like, at least it gives you a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Right.
That is certainly, I think, a tough thing, knowing that a tournament of that size is going to cap where people are going to be traveling internationally for it. And they have to book their travel before registration even opens. That's rough.
Yeah, something on Twitter that I agreed with, that someone had the idea that you could have way in advance, like almost a year in advance. We could have some kind of like deposit system, right? Where like you put $20 down now, and that kind of lets Pokemon gauge the interest and how many people might go, and then that can help them with their bookings, even a year in advance, like some kind of way to just like gauge interest and like help them determine how many people they would have interest, and that would maybe help with like the registration.
Heck, even make it a non-refundable full registration fee. Like, that wouldn't be like, I'm sure people will complain about that too, but if that guarantees your registration and you're actually worried about it, and maybe you have to cancel by the time the tournament comes around, but if you were worried about it, you could put down that non-refundable, and it guarantees you a spot, and they make sure that they book enough room, right? There are certainly solutions to all of the issues.
Yeah.
But it's tough, right? Like, Pokemon has grown like crazy, and they're struggling to figure out what to do with it. I'm sure there's just a lot of issues, right? And they can't all be fixed overnight, but hopefully some of them will get fixed.
Yeah.
The big one I want to see is no more lunch breaks.
No more lunch breaks.
No more lunch breaks.
It does make the day go by so much faster.
We can get into that another time, but like some of these regionals, man, the way they're running them, there's like 40 minutes between every round. Who needs a lunch break when you got a lunch break?
You have a lunch break after every single round.
Okay. See, that's the problem. The real problem is the in-between rounds.
Yeah, but if they
the
can't,
lunch break isn't the problem.
But that's only going to get harder to solve the more people come to these tournaments, right? When you have a 2,000 player tournament, the time between rounds is just going to keep going because you're going to have more judge calls. You're going to have more time extensions. You're going to have more games going to time and going into turns. And it always seems to be like table 567 that you're waiting on.
They have the 20-minute time extension.
I do think, I would also say, I hear you guys' points. I also think it could be a little bit of a health concern too. Like, you have people that...
I agree, but if it's known beforehand, you can prepare for it, right? You can bring food,
well,
you can bring a sandwich, you can bring...
If you're playing a game in a best of 3, right? Yeah. It's not uncommon for you to be going all the way up, and you maybe have 5 minutes before your next round.
That's true, but then pretty much every time you're going to have at least like 20 minutes between the next round. Like it was pretty uncommon to not have that much of a break, and that's enough time to eat a sandwich that you packed.
Yeah, I think that there's enough rounds where you're going to finish. Like, there's going to be a round sometime in the day where you're going to finish early. And if there isn't a round where you finish early, you're probably the player that people are complaining about to their friends that they keep tying because they keep playing players like you who play too slow.
Like me?
Not you. But if you don't find a round sometime during the day where you finish early, it means something is happening where you're... I don't know, man.
Yeah,
if you're playing 2 games and going to time every round, I don't know. It might be you.
Shout out to the guy who was 707 going into round 15.
707, bro.
He was 707. I was his only loss.
Yeah,
that's
crazy.
That actually is pretty crazy.
We don't have to.
What was he playing?
Reggie's. Yeah,
he was playing Reggie's. That makes sense.
As
a former Reggie player, I can confirm that does happen.
Yeah. We don't have to get into the whole lunch break thing, but I think there's ways that tournament registration and tournaments being run can be streamlined, and hopefully we start to see some changes. I know some people have started talking about like best of 1 will make the day go better. Man, if they are struggling to pair rounds and get them going, and we do 14 best of 1 rounds instead of 9 best of 3, that day is going to go way longer.
Yeah.
But I think before drastic changes need to be made to the system, I think minor, painless, easy changes can be made to make things run a little better.
Yeah.
And hopefully we start to see that over the coming year into next season. But with all that said about NAIC, I think we're all excited for the NAIC format. But we're still currently in our Scarlet and Violet base format, which I think a lot of people are enjoying. Certainly I'm personally enjoying it a lot more than Silver Tempest, and it is nice to know that even though as we get towards the end of it and maybe we are kind of ready for something new, it's not a 5-month format like Silver Tempest was. The next set is right around the corner. So all that being said, best deck and format, what are you guys thinking right now for tournaments like Hartford, which is this weekend, and Milwaukee, which is in 2 weeks? What are the best decks?
It's kind of funny, right? Because if you would have asked me, 2 weeks ago, I would have said Guardy hands down. But now there's kind of this back and forth, like if Lost Box just has such a good matchup in the Guardy, so if there's a lot of Lost Box at the next tournament, then maybe Guardy's not as good of a play. But I think right now, to me, the best decks in format are Guardy and Lost Box, but that doesn't necessarily mean for me it's the best play. I think a lot of people are thinking that Lugia is a really good play for this upcoming one, but I don't know if I'd call Lugia the best deck in format.
Yeah, I don't think I would call Lugia the best deck in format. The interesting thing I want to point out now, I don't recall what won Sao Paulo. Do we remember like the last? Because we had that big regional weekend, and then we had the SPE where Andrew Hedrick won with Lost Box. But like the 2 last regionals, US and then EUIC, were won by Arc decks.
Yeah, that's true.
And Arctina, I think we could see go up and play a little bit. I know a lot of people have been enjoying that deck. And we saw a few players still do really well with Arcdedon. There were a few players in top 16 and one in top 8 at Portland. One of them was just playing a very similar list to Alex Szymanski, but then there was also that new sort of Arcdedon Umbreon VMAX deck that was coming around. So I think Arc is still something to really watch out for.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Arceus is in a significantly better spot than myself and I think many of us thought initially. Again, kind of like with what Max said 2 weeks ago, I would not have necessarily been able to come to any kind of definitive conclusion of what I felt like the best deck and format is. I definitely probably would have been leading more towards Gardevoir or Lost Box, but I can sit here today and I feel pretty confident in saying that the turbo build with the Dragonite and the Forest Seal Stone, I think that probably is the best deck and format right now. It has such a good matchup into Gardevoir. It has really consistent matchups into basically everything that is not heavily teching specifically against it, because it can deal with their Manaphy's. It can deal massive single damage. It, of course, can rely on the Sableyes, the early damage from Cramorants. It is so stupid fast. The number of times that I, as a Gardevoir player, have been hit by a turn 2 Sableye
it's pretty nuts.
is absurd.
Yeah.
The fact that that deck is capable of doing that makes me want to vomit sometimes.
It's that Forest Seal Stone, honestly.
The Forest Seal Stone is
Yeah.
absolutely broken. The deck is just super, super good. I will say, I do think that Gardevoir is still a fantastic deck. It has really positive matchups into most other decks. But unless you're playing, you know, the Hatterene with the Klefki package, I think you're looking pretty rough. Like, you have maybe, assuming both players are setting up, like, well, right? I still think that even if you're hitting your research, you're hitting your VIPs, I still think that the Guardy player probably only has a 30% win condition. Yeah. Maybe even 20. It's that bad.
Yeah. It really depends on, like, a few key Cresselia and Penny plays and Collapse Stadium stuff. But personally, I was not really on, like, the train of Champions Festival and Guardy. In this format, obviously with like the Drifloon and stuff, maybe it's better next format. But I think if I were to play Guardy, I would have to find a friend to borrow some Champions Festivals from. Just that ability to hit, you know, Oko like V-Stars with the baby Guardy is just, you can't really pass it up now, especially with the prevalence or the domination that we've seen a little bit from the Arc decks. I just don't see those like going down in play a ton. If anything, they go up in play. There's interesting variants now with the Umbreon or the Vulpix. And then there's the Art Giratina as well, where you're going to have to be, you know, KOing 3 V-Stars probably to win that matchup. And you don't really want to two-shot them.
Yeah.
And then there's still Lugia V-Star that you want to, you want to be able to KO with a single prizer, because you don't want to give up 2 prizes to the Tyranitar on the Zacian or the Guardian EX itself. And it helped, the Champions Festival's got to help a little bit in the Lost Box matchup. So
it depends. The Champions Festival, I think, can be helpful in Lost Box, but I think it also, I don't know, I don't think it is as impactful.
Yeah.
I think the 10 damage is fine, but I'm not sure. 10 damage is also not a lot.
Yeah.
It's enough. It's definitely good if you're facing heavier V-Star metas.
Yeah.
But I think still against Lost Box, you're still in trouble most of the time.
So for Portland, we saw like a 20% Guardy, and then just barely under that was Lost Box for the meta share. I think the next one was Mew, and then Lugia. And Lugia had fallen off quite a lot. But there's been a lot of chatter about Lugia being still a tournament-winning deck. So do we see Lugia stay around like that 12% meta share it was last at, or do we see it go back up?
It definitely goes up.
Really?
I think no chance it doesn't go up, in my opinion. I think the 2 decks that'll see the biggest rise at least for Hartford will be Lugia and Arctina. I think those decks are going to go up quite a bit, and I think Guardy will probably fall.
Yeah. I don't think Guardy falls that far, though.
Maybe not that far, but it'll see a drop.
Yeah.
It won't be the most popular.
I don't think it'll be most popular. I think we see it. I think Guardy is a popular deck because it's Guardy. There's a lot of people who enjoy playing it, and I think it is a very skillful deck, so good players are still going to bring it. So I don't think we ever see Guardy fall below like a 16% meta share. It might not be at like the 20-21% that it was at for Portland, but I don't think it'll fall too far. Lost Box is a similar one where it'll fluctuate like between like a 5% limit between like 17 and 22 kind of percent of the meta. I don't think we'll ever see a deck in this format like Lugia was last format where it's going to be like 35% of a meta share.
Right.
But I concur with you. I think that the Turbo Lost Box probably is the best deck in format, followed by Guardy.
Mm-hmm.
I think Guardy has a very positive matchup into basically everything that isn't Lost Box, and then against a Lost Box, a good Guardy player can still win.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it's not impossible to win.
It's not impossible. I honestly don't think it's like a 30% win rate. I think 40 is fair.
You think 40 is fair?
I don't know.
I think like against Sablezard maybe.
Yeah, it just depends. Like if you get the penny play off on the Zacian and just like negate damage that's being done, and then get a collapse stadium play off later.
Yeah.
Right. Like
it's just you're not playing penny on turn 2. Like your turn 2 is not going to be devoted to playing penny.
Yeah.
If you even have it in hand, you probably don't even have it in hand. Like if you start Zacian, that thing's probably just going to get knocked out. Like that's the harsh reality of the situation. That's what sucks about it. I like to play double collapse to try and force like a situation where I start Zacian to be as damageless as possible, but still, like I'm telling you, man, it's tough.
Yeah,
they find a way.
Yeah, so an interesting meta out there still. I think there's probably some other things to be discovered. I've seen one guy, I don't know their name, but they've been posting a lot about Snorlax control.
Yeah, I've been seeing that.
And I think they've been doing really well at cups, they've said. And now who knows what kind of cups they're playing at, but
it's a really cool deck.
I think there's a spot for control in this meta for sure.
Yeah.
And then you just have all of these different arc variants. You have a few different Lost Box variants. You still have Lost Tina being played a little bit, Gudra being played a little bit. I think Gudra has had a tough time, recently.
Yeah.
But I think it's still an okay play. I think that Kyogre stuff has just been really tough for Gudra.
It's really hard to not get to a point where they just checkmate you.
Yeah.
Like at that point, because most Gudra lists don't play Manaphy, so and even if you are playing the Manaphy, they're just gonna Sableye it.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty tough for Gudra. I think it's an okay play. I think if you are a really good Gudra player, I think you could make day 2, but I don't think Gudra will crack like top 8 probably.
Yeah. So next on our list, we have our Stellar Wish segment. That is where we talk about a card that is in current standard or soon to be in current standard that we hope is good, but never will be.
I'll kick it off this week.
All right, let's do it.
I got Rapid Strike Jumpluff. Which,
oh man, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a really cool ability. It's like it can attack twice on a turn, which is cool. That opens up some doors for like using one of the scrolls, like the 30 spread, which is something that we were talking about earlier. Yeah. Like so 30 spread to everything twice. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's got a really good stage 1 where you just need to attach an energy to the stage 1, and then you get to search your deck for the Jumpluff and evolve it. Yeah. So that's really good. It's a Rapid Strike Pokemon, so you can play with the Octillery and search stuff out, which is nice. But it was a deck I was interested in like messing around with for like Paldea Evolved format.
Yeah.
But the issue is that Manaphy is just in like so many decks.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, you could
first have to like Lost City KO their Manaphy,
and that's just
before,
so awkward. Yeah. So it's just, maybe if it ever gets to the point where there's like an easier way to deal with Manaphy, then maybe that card could see something. But for now, I think it's unfortunately just never going to be good.
Yeah.
Maybe they could print something like the old Gardevoir level X, the bring down attack for 2 psychic energy. You knock out your opponent's Pokemon with the lowest remaining HP. That could deal with Manaphy.
Yeah, that would deal with Manaphy.
That also is just a crazy attack, so they probably are never printing it ever again.
Yeah.
But
this doesn't fit in a deck like that, but I think the Magnezone V into the Magnezone V-Star combo is so crazy against Manaphy because
it's so good.
For 2 energy, I think, is it 2 energy? The V can bring up a Pokemon from the bench and do 40 to it, and because Manaphy's weak to lightning, it KOs the Manaphy, and then the next turn you evolve into the V-Star and do a 90-90.
Yeah, that's the Magnezone is really sick. Yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah, and it's really frustrating because as the Lost Box player, if you don't have a way to KO the Magnezone, or like maybe they have another Magnezone set up on the bench, but you have to play Clara on that turn and get Manaphy back, and it feels so bad to play Clara in the early turns because you want to be using Chorus, getting to that 10, and then you're also down to Clara, which you want to use later for Sableye, and it feels bad.
The Magnezone really V and V-Star are very good cards in the meta right now. I would not, honestly, by the time this is going to be uploaded, the current regional will already have concluded. I wouldn't be surprised to see Magnezone crack top 16. I wouldn't be surprised
to see surprise Miraidons in top 8.
They keep doing it, man. They keep counting them out, and they keep coming back.
The Magnezone build specifically, that deck has some legs. I'm just saying.
Now, the other thing, too, to mention, the Ampharos EX is now legal.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's good. But if Flaffy has a chance to be good, it's with the Ampharos EX.
Yeah,
and I want it to be good so bad. And I think you probably have to pair with the Magnezone to get there with it.
Yeah, I would agree.
I was trying like a Flying Pika build, which was fun, but it's just so low power. It's tough. But yeah, so. Rapid Strike Jump Bluff. That's a card I love. Back when like Battle Styles came out and we were kind of like nearing the end of the tag teams, I was like so sick of the format, and I was so sick of 3-prize Pokemon, and I was like, what if I could get like locally together and like we would just do like a single prize format? And this was like right before GLC started to come out too. So I think that was like I was kind of in the same space as Mahone at that time, where I was like, what if I could create like a 1-prize format for standard, because I just can't play with these 3-prizers anymore. Well, a couple months later, Mahone comes out with GLC, but I was thinking about that. I was like, wow, Jump Bluff would have been busted in like a single prize format back then.
That's true.
It would have been, because it was before Manaphy too.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Yeah, so that would have been.
Oh, do we still have Bench Barrier Mew? No, that had rotated too.
Wait. No, it hadn't quite rotated yet, but it was going to soon. Yeah. But yeah, so that's a good one. So my Stellar Wish for this week is one that's actually coming out in Paldea Evolved. And I feel like this Pokemon was done a little bit dirty. It was one of my favorite Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet. But the Tinkaton EX and the Baby Tinkaton are both very cool cards. The Tinkaton EX, I believe, does 30 times the number of cards in your hand for a double colorless energy. It has 300 HP. And then the Tinkaton, like the Baby Tinkaton, the non-rule box Tinkaton, has trade, but it's discard, draw a card from your hand and draw 3 instead of 2, which is like a great ability, but their stage 2 is hard to get into play. I've seen some people in Japan playing it with the Zoroark, so you can evolve into the stage 2. And then so you can basically have a full board of Tinkatons without having, because you can only play 4 of the Tinkatink or whatever, right? But you could technically get 6 Tinkatons out using the Zoroark, right? So it's an interesting deck, but I just don't think it'll be powerful enough, unfortunately.
I think the biggest problem is that there's a card that comes out in the same set, and that's the Iono. So it just kills.
Well, yeah, you'd have to play it with the Melodic for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And Melodic is definitely a card I've been thinking about a lot going into the Paldea Evolved format. But is it worth playing a Melodic over just a Bibarel?
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah, depends on the deck. If you are playing something that searches out water Pokemon and an item card, maybe Melodic's good.
Yeah, that's true.
That's Irida, if you didn't know. All right, what's your Stellar Wish this week, Austin?
So my Stellar Wish this week is Toxicroak EX. And when I first saw this card, I immediately thought it was absolute trash. It is, but here's the thing that's interesting about it is I tried building a deck with it, and the interesting thing is that it hits some really interesting numbers. So if you have Toxicroak, right, you can power it up in a single turn, actually, because of Dark Patch, Double Turbo. Okay, you're hitting Gardevoir, of course, for weakness with your Dark typing. The poison is it's a 6 damage
between
turns. The base damage for that attack, I think, is 140. I want to say something. I think it's 140. Or no, what is it? I can't remember now. But you attach a choice belt to it, and you have a Hisuian Sneasler, or like the Radiant Sneasler on your bench, right? And essentially, if your opponent doesn't retreat, you're doing, I'm pretty sure, 330 damage at the end of their turn.
Yeah. So I'm gonna hit you with the question that every rogue player gets from all of their friends when they talk about their rogue deck. How's your Lost Box matchup?
Well, see, in the deck that I was playing, like the stadium of choice was lost.
Very nice. Yeah.
Because otherwise it's terrible.
Yeah.
But it's actually not so terrible when you play the Lost Zone stadium.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And then also without the, like, even without the choice belt, or it was like without something, like you're at the end of the turn, it's still like 280 or something like that. So relevant numbers. And you also, of course, don't need to continue to attack with it every turn. It's other attack for 1 dark energy, searches your deck for 2 cards and adds them to hand. Not a bad attack. So even if you start, you start a little frog, you turn it into big frog, even if you only have 1 attachment for the dark energy, you're still finding 2 cards.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. On the turns where you don't need to attack with the other attack, you can just find 2 cards. So it's interesting. Yeah. It's an interesting card. It's bad though.
Yeah, I just wonder too, like, not Toxicroak EX specifically, but all these stage 1 EXs that we're gonna get. I just wonder if there's a world where that we continue to get more and more cards before the next rotation, which I don't know if it's going to be after Worlds or if it's going to be in like January, February, March, April again. Who knows? But Zoroark, there's all these stage 1 EXs. There's a lot of non-EX stage 1 attackers. There's the whatever the Rainbow Energy coming out next set is called. There's a lot of stuff starting to just like build up that deck, and it's like, will it get there?
I have my 4/4 Zoroark now.
There's one more thing I do need to mention about Toxicroak.
Okay.
So there's a Skunk Tank V that for a DCE, if your opponent's, so you gust, like for the DCE, you gust up a Pokemon, and if it had retreated during your opponent's last turn, it does 120 damage. So, which is pretty interesting. But again,
I've played against a Skuntank V deck at a local event. I think the person might have been somebody's mom who was there just to have fun, and she just like had a deck together. But yeah, it was mostly Skuntank V, and I never really saw. Not that I think there was any theory behind the deck, but we never got to see it because
we never got to see it.
It ended pretty quickly. So
yeah. Anyway. That's all I have to say about it.
All right. Well, that's it from us today. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys next week where we will go over our predictions for Milwaukee and maybe a little bit more about the Paldea Evolve set since pre-releases will be starting soon.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
All right. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Yeah, thanks.